Okay. Good morning, everyone. Nice to have us in here this morning, this beautiful Tuesday morning. My name is Olaiwola Lawal. I'm sure a couple of you individuals in here know already know the face. I also have Owen Yoa here, the CEO of Eko-Konnect. So what we'll be discussing today is basically discussing around the importance of the Nigerian identity and access management, basically, which is eduID. Also, I'm sure most of us have heard about eduID once in a couple of discussions that might have come up over the course of interactions with Eko-Connect and also the wider uh, Nigerian research and education community. So what we'll be discussing today is really try to understand what is eduID.ng, see how it can benefit the community, also get some feedback from the members of the participants in this webinar today on how they feel eduID would be able to contribute to some positively on campus. So just to get us started, uh, just a bit of some webinar housekeeping. You are free to introduce yourself using the chats. Please let us know your name, your institution, just sort of interaction going on in the chat. Also, this webinar will be recorded, and the links to the presentations and the webinar, this recording will also be provided to everyone after the webinar. So you could also use the chat and the Q&A to submit your questions over the course of the presentations and the discussions and deliberations. Also, if you need to speak, please use the raise hand icon on the Zoom chat, and we'll give you permission to be able to speak and address the webinar if you have any opinion. Also, just to run us through the webinar agenda today, just some brief things. We'll be discussing about the Nigeria presentation on the Nigeria Identity Federation itself, and then we'll run some bits of Menticle and Q&A just to get some feedbacks and discussions around the presentation. Also, we'll be talking about eduroam. It's also a very interesting subject that we also want to see get some feedbacks about from the members of the audience on it. And we'll also discuss some Menticles and Q&A on that as well. Also, we just as a roundup, we'll also look at some briefly at some other complementary services from Eko-Connect, and then we can look at the next steps and close for the day. All right, so just thanks for everyone for coming to for being here today. So I'll be handing over to Owen, and he will get started on the presentation for today on basically the eduID.ng. I will be in the chat and the Q&A polls looking out for any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Ola, for the introduction. And what we want to try to do today, we know everyone's very busy, so we really appreciate the time that everyone has taken out to join this webinar. We're going to try to make it very concise and compact, so we hope to finish within the 90 minutes. What we want to do, we're going to be touching on services and infrastructure that really most people should already have heard about or be familiar with. We'll find out about that when we do the Q&A. But the purpose of this webinar and a series of other webinars that we're going to be holding is to really try to ensure that the Nigerian research and education community starts to really utilize the services and infrastructure that brings them into the participation within the global research and education ecosystem. So there are lots of services and infrastructure that are available and being used by universities, college campuses around the world that are not really being utilized in Nigeria. Some of that might be due to awareness, infrastructure, financial issues, or different issues. But Eko-Konnect drive in the last quarter of the year, and indeed into 2025, is to really ensure that our research and education community is starting to really utilize infrastructure, platforms, and services that are being used globally. So we're going to really try to make a concerted drive to make that happen, and also try to understand as well from our communities uh, why maybe the adoption and uptake has been so limited up until this point. So one of the most basic services that is inherent in most institutions around the globe is the education identity, or eduID. This is infrastructure that is used globally and provides so many benefits to researchers, to academic staff, and students around the world. And yet, the use of eduID in Nigeria, certainly, and maybe Africa generally, is very limited. So what I'm going to try to do right now is just kind of run through these slides. Some of you may already be familiar with what I'm going to talk about. Some of you may not. We've tried to make the presentation not too technical so that the different audience members can understand what we're talking about. And then we're hoping that during the Q&A sessions, we can actually have an engagement to understand from the audience, what may be some of the issues. And of course, like I said, at the end of the webinar, like Ola mentioned in the agenda, we want to look at what are the practical next steps we can take to ensuring that we can start to engage and utilize these services. So I think most of you are familiar with Eko-Konnect. We're an NREN service provider in Nigeria. Most of you will probably be familiar with NGREN and Eko-Konnect. We also operate in the Nigerian space to provide different services that should be used by our universities and research institutions and higher education organizations. So we provide consultancy, capacity building, workshops, and basically some of the key services and infrastructure that we're currently focused on are shown in this slide. And obviously for today's webinar, we're going to be focusing on the services in bold, which is the Nigerian Identity Federation, or eduID.ng, and eduroam. So what is an identity federation? So really, an identity federation is just really a group of organizations that come together in some kind of domain to exchange information about their users and resources that they have, and that enables collaborations and transactions within a trusted manner. All right. And within the context of education identity federations, there are sort of two major components within the federation. You have the identity provider, and that's like the system or the institution that is bringing users that want to consume a service or access a service or platform. And then the other major component of an identity federation is the service provider. So that's the system or organization that takes in requests from the identity provider, and upon asserting that this person or institution is who they claim to be, then they're able to provide a service or access to whatever platforms or services that they're providing. So that's basically what an identity federation is. And education identity across the globe, eduID, is based on the principles of trust and identity, leveraging identity and access management frameworks. So the idea here is that across the globe, there are transactions, collaborations, and consumptions of services that are going on by the research and education community globally. And these are services that are being accessed in a trusted manner. And as I go through this presentation, we'll probably touch on that. So, like I said, eduID is a global concept. It's a global infrastructure that is used by NRENs around the globe or research and education communities around the globe. So, eduid.ng is the Nigerian area, basically, of eduID. So, as the slide says, the Nigerian Identity Federation is really that federation that basically houses and manages Nigerian users that want to consume education-related services. And we manage, Eko-Konnect sort of manages the infrastructure on behalf of the Nigerian research and education community. There are more details about eduid.ng at the link provided, and I'm sure Ola will probably put a link to the website in the chat. Right. And so what we try to ensure with this infrastructure is that with the security, privacy, and good governance to ensure that there is a large degree of trust in using our infrastructure of the Federation to access a plethora of the different services. So this is where maybe everybody should just take a little bit of an interest. So this diagram is trying to depict a scenario where you have users who are leveraging the Identity Federation, that's eduid.ng, to access different kinds of services. They could be subscription services, they could be services to Microsoft products or Google products. They could be access to different kinds of services. And and the way that this works is that through the Identity Federation, these services that are given by service providers, they are able to verify users, and based on that verification or identification of the user, can give you the prerequisite access to a service. So there are many different examples and use cases, and we'll probably touch on some of that as we proceed or during the Q&A service, Q&A section. So, like I said, if you're a member of the Nigerian Identity Federation, you have the opportunity to access lots of services. And indeed, there are hundreds, of services that are actually available globally that might be of interest to you or to your institution. And I think part of the challenge for our organizations and universities in Nigeria is that there's a lack of awareness about what is available. Many of these platforms and services are free of charge, and many are offered at highly discounted prices. So maybe for librarians who are in this webinar, it might be that you're subscribing to certain library databases and you're paying for that access. But if you, most of the services that are provided by platform providers for library actually are service providers for identity federations. So essentially, if you were accessing their platforms as part of an identity federation, there could be opportunities to get access to more of what the service provider is giving you, or maybe even be entitled to higher discounts because that provider is able to identify who you are and trust who you are, and on that basis could provide their services at reduced costs. So, so like I said, this is one of the reasons why identity management is so important. It's an underlying infrastructure that gives access to researchers, academic staff, students to so many different services. And the access and authentication is based on your identity credentials or your eduID identity that is housed within the federation that you are emerging from. So in the case of Nigeria, that would be eduID.ng. If you were a user or an institution in Ghana, then the Ghanaian Federation Identity Federation is called eduid.gh. And so, depending on what country you're coming from, you are able to access these different kinds of services from that federation. And many of these service providers will only allow access to their platforms and services through federated identity or identity federations. So there's a lot that we're missing out on in Nigeria by not adopting or being part of the Nigerian Federation. So again, the way the identity management works is that once you're a member of the Identity Federation or an IDP identity provider, you're authenticated on a platform. And once that authentication takes place, that is knowing who you are, what institution you're from, then the service provider gives you access to a service or a platform based on the profile of user that you are coming from that identity federation. So you could be a member of the Nigerian Identity Federation as a staff or as a student. And then when you try to connect to a service provider's infrastructure, they're actually able to use profile who you are, and on the basis of who you are, give you the appropriate access to their services and platforms. So identity management is important, and I think maybe even the key thing is that it's very important because it's a framework and standard that is being used globally by the research and education community. So there are lots of services that are on offer that leverage federated identity infrastructure. And again, what is a good thing about identity management is that you can use the concept of a single sign-on. So you use the same username and passwords to be able to access so many different kinds of services because these credentials are encrypted and housed within the federation. So what that does as well, it provides lots of more collaboration opportunities for institutions. So I know that many institutions engage in bilateral agreements and relationships with universities in different parts of the world. But if you were also leveraging eduID.ng or identity management, you have even more opportunity to establish collaborations with other organizations or institutions in or outside Nigeria. It is a way to be able to meet other organizations and collaborate. And the last point on this slide is you can have access to more resources, more data. So it's a very key infrastructure that we need to be leveraging. Um, and the other thing about identity management, particularly for the ICT people and network operators, if you're using eduID.ng federated identity, you can actually manage your users a whole lot better. So I know that the IT department, even within your own local intranets, you have different services that you might be providing on your networks, maybe access to email, access to e-learning platforms, and other services that you might be running even on your local campus networks. And if you're adopting identity management infrastructure, what you could have is that your staff and users can actually use one credential to access the different services rather than having the different platforms having to manage usernames and passwords. So the federation basically manages that username and password management on behalf of the service provider, so they don't have to worry about that. To give you an example, I'm sure that these days when you go on the internet and you want to maybe connect to a particular website or platform, rather than prompting you to put in a username and password, they'll basically you're sometimes asked to log in with your Google account or your Facebook credentials. So essentially, what that particular platform or service provider is basically saying is that we trust Google or we trust Facebook. So if you have a Facebook account and you want to access this particular platform, all you need to do is use your Facebook credentials, and we will basically ask Facebook or Google if they know who you are. And if they do assert that, yes, you're a valid user of their platforms, then you get access to my platform. And so many of us are already using identity management in different ways already in more commercial scenarios on the internet. But this federated identity management works in pretty much the same way, but it's exclusive for education resources and for education users. Of course, I'm not going to go into the technologies, but there are a number of standards that are used for security assertions and encryption of data to ensure that everything is secure and the integrity of the infrastructure is not compromised. So, who is eligible to be part of the Nigerian Identity Federation? Well, all institutions that are NUC, MBTE, NCCE accredited are eligible to be part of the eduID.ng, and also Nigerian research institutions. Now, there could be other external organizations outside these core institutions that may be interested in being part of the federation, especially those organizations that probably want to offer a service. So what happens in that scenario? Those service providers would apply to become a service provider in the Federation. And as part of our governance structure, we would review that application, and if there's appropriate approval from our governance, then we can also give access to service provider membership for non-education organizations, typically service providers. And just in way of governance, um, the eduID governance is sort of managed by a steering committee. That steering committee comprises of the federation operator, which in this scenario is Eko-Konnect. We are responsible for essentially managing and maintaining the federation infrastructure for Nigeria. And we have a technical committee. So the technical committee comprises certain members of typically ICT departments and libraries of a number of institutions, universities. So they kind of sort of are the technical committee. And the role of the technical committee is to guide the operator in terms of what kind of services should be available through the federation, discuss issues of how the infrastructure can be improved. So we're supposed to have regular quarterly meetings. We've not been so good on that at the moment, but the idea is that the steering committee meets every quarter to discuss issues, particularly more of a technical nature. And then for all members of the federation, or users, we refer to these as assembly members, who have also got a way to communicate with the steering committee about some of the wishes that they might have in terms of utilizing the federation in different scenarios. So that's really how the governance structure is currently set up. Now, the cost of membership is currently free. So eduID.ng has been in existence for a number of years, but it's sort of free. And like I'd mentioned before, the benefits of being part of the Federation is that you can have access to lots of free services from different service providers, or discounted services from service providers. But of course, being able to maintain the infrastructure over the years does cost time and effort and resources. So pricing is kind of being reviewed in this last quarter, maybe to see if in order to maintain the infrastructure and a lot of development that is required as standards keep evolving and improving, we need to have resources that can help to maintain the infrastructure. So in this last quarter of the year, we're probably looking at ways of trying to ensure that we can continue to maintain the infrastructure and look at the cost of how that might work. So information about how to join the Identity Federation and how to the policies that govern the operations. Like I said, they're available at the website eduID.ng. So you can go there and look at the policy documents, and you can also sign up for eduID. First of all, in the first instance, you have to sign up to join the federation, and this flow chart sort of describes how the application process actually works. So you basically fill in the form, which is online, you submit it, and then the steering committee basically looks at the application. Typically, if you're a member of NUC, MBTE, NCCE, as already mentioned, then this is more of a formality. But again, we just basically cross-check to ensure that the institution that is applying is a bona fide Nigerian institution and using bona fide authorized representatives. So once we get all of that assured, then we then go on to create the identity provider for that institution, and then it sort of moves on from that point. Right. So the interfederation. So, like I said, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, eduID.ng is the Nigerian Identity Federation. eduID.gh is the Ghanaian Identity Federation. So each country has its own identity federation. And all of these federations come together in a kind of global federation called eduGAIN. And what eduGAIN is basically a huge service provider that allows different identity federations from across the globe access a plethora of services that are exclusive to the research and education community globally. Many of these services are free. Some are paid for services, but at discounted prices. And so basically being part of the Nigerian Identity Federation means as well you can get access to services that might be of interest to you beyond Nigerian borders. And like I say, the eduID.ng was accepted into eduGAIN about nearly 3 years ago. But again, one of the reasons why we're running this webinar is that even though we're a member of eduGAIN, there's really been no uptake of some of the services and platforms that are available in eduGAIN. So this webinar again is a kind of way to get everybody resensitized and then look at practical steps to ensure that we can start to get the benefits of using the Identity Federation. So that's a kind of a summary. Thank you for your time and ears.
Thank you very much, Dad. Like I said earlier, if you have any questions or any question at all, you can either put them in the chat or use the Q&A option as well to ask your questions, and we'll be happy to answer it. Basically, this is just the Q&A questions if you have any at all. But before we go into the Q&A session, like I also said earlier, we just want to run a bit of a quick poll, the mental poll about just 2 to 3 questions, just to sort of get some feedback from you about your understanding of eduID.ng after this presentation as it is. So I'll be sharing my screen now, just with to include a bit of instruction how to access this poll. So hopefully you are able to do that as well. To just be a quick presentation.
Allah, you might need to look at your mic because we're not hearing you very well. I'm not sure if it's your mic or it's your connection, but take a look at that.
All right, so any better now?
Slightly better, yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen now for us to access the Menti poll. So yeah, we can now see my screen. All right, so can we all just quickly visit this site on our phone and our devices. You are easy to access on any device you have. So I'm just going to leave it on the screen for a few minutes for everyone to be able to access. Just go to menti.com and then you see an option to type in this code there. So you can use the code 5302301. So if you're having any problem accessing it, please let me know in the chat. And if you're able to access it, also let me know. You can just say yes or no, depending. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. So
So
maybe
are
you
we
want
up there?
to switch your
So can I
screen.
can I proceed? Okay, so I'm going to proceed to the next question now. All right. So on your screen, you should be able to see the question. So you can just kindly answer that, please. So for those that are still trying to access, you can see the code to join at the top of the screen as well, menti.com, and then use the code to access. So please let's kindly do that quickly. Okay. There are about 4 responses now. So I believe there are more people who join.
There are many more of you in this webinar. So please, if you can just endeavor to try and fill the Menti, it'd be very helpful for us.
It doesn't require any form of registration at all. If you're worried about that, all you just have to do is go to menti.com and use the code. You don't need to register or fill in any details of yours, and it's completely anonymous. So menti.com and then use the code.
As we're kind of seeing is um, so that there does need to be a whole lot more work based on the responses we're getting. Please, there are far more people. If you can just try to fill this, we'd appreciate it. Um,
So this also helps us at Eko-Konnect to know
yes.
how more we need to do. So at least let the community know more about this particular service.
Right. So it's looking like people are kind of familiar. Um, so, okay.
All right, so I would go to the next question now.
Before you go, just wait one few more seconds. Let's see. We'll get more participation because there are a lot more people than those who are actually engaging with the Menti.
So like I said, if you still have any questions, please use the either the chat or the Q&A to answer your question. So the code is 5302001. I just put that in the chat. 5302. Thank you very much. I think we have about 13 responses so far.
Okay, maybe we move to the next question then.
Okay. So this is a bit of a rank. So I haven't listened to eduID. You've listened to some of the benefits. What eduID would typically do on campus as all the service offer. So how do you rank this service? You can put your ranking. How do you feel they would greatly benefit your institution if your institution is basically has been onboarded to eduID.ng? So you can rank them as from most important to the least important on your how you feel about this.
Will we be able to see that on the screen, Allah?
Yes, sir. Yes, you'll be able to see it. You select
Yeah,
all
okay,
of
yeah, all right,
all
yeah,
the four options.
yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. So remember, it's a rank. You are ranking it from the most important to the least important of how you based on these four options. I can see quite the majority for now seem to be leaning towards increased collaboration, which I feel we can understand why it's eduID, which you understand eduID sort of brings much more visibility to your institution, to your staff, to the students on campus. You increase more visibility and international collaborations for them as well.
Are there any other questions, Allah? We should move
Yeah,
to the...
just one more. So the same thing as well, just another rank. Don't worry, we'll share some of these results as well to everyone who's part of the things where we'll vice versa you just sort of understand. So this is also just another sort of looking at okay, these four options, these benefits. How would you rank the most important to you as well? So you answer this the same way you just answered the previous question. So we'll do that quickly so that we can go to the next presentation. Yes, all the workshop materials, all the presentation and the recording of this webinar will be made available to everyone. Okay, Lawal Sulaiman asked, when you join eduID, are you eligible for discounts on services that are not free? I will let Owen answer that.
Yeah.
All right. So I think gotten some sufficient answer. So due to
Yeah.
time, we're going to proceed to the next presentation.
Well,
All right. So
just before we do that, but thank you everyone for participating in the in the Menti, and we're seeing some of the questions, and maybe and again, what we're trying to do is try to look at how best we can utilize this infrastructure to best serve our institutions. So somebody asked, about discounts. So, one of the most widely used tools is probably something like Office 365. So I know that different institutions might have their own kind of arrangements with Microsoft in order to have access to Office 365. But a more coherent way to potential, I'm just saying this is a potential use case to work with the likes of a Microsoft or a Google or another global service provider is to approach them as an identity federation. So let's say X number of universities were in the Nigerian Identity Federation with all their users, and Microsoft is approached to say this federation wants to be able to access Office 365. Because you're coming as an identity federation, that becomes very attractive to Microsoft in the sense that they know that the users are coming from a trusted source. They will have a clear idea on the users, and because they don't have to take responsibility for managing usernames and passwords, it becomes a whole lot easier for Microsoft to offer 365 to a federation at highly discounted prices. And that's a model that a lot of the global service providers are currently engaging in as well. So one of the things that is of interest to Eko-Konnect is to develop the membership of the Nigerian Identity Federation. And then at the behest of our users or the steering committee, actually go seeking collaboration with a lot of these global service providers that may be able to give services to staff and students at highly discounted prices or for free. So, like they say, there's strength in numbers. And if we're able, different institutions are able to come together under the umbrella of an identity federation, despite many of the technical benefits that would accrue, there are potential collaboration and commercial opportunities that can be very beneficial to users.
okay.
So time
Thank
is
you. Thank you. I just asked one more question, sir. How will this improve remote access to library resources for resources using IP authentication? I think you sort of alluded to that as well. Maybe you could just speak more on that.
Yeah, I don't know, Allah, you might be better, but let me have a crack at it. Typically with library, well, not many of the library subscriptions are IP based. So what it means is to access a library subscription, the provider, the service provider who says you can only access my platform using a known IP address. And so what that basically means is that if you want to access that subscription, you probably have to be on campus because it's only the IP address that's going out of your campus onto the internet that that service provider would recognize. And that is the way for that service provider to actually know that the person trying to connect to their database or platform is coming from that institution. But like we said, these same service providers also uh, accept identity federations. They're service providers for federated identity. So that's another way to access their platforms. So it's like, oh, I want to go from Lagos to Ibadan. I can go by car, I can go by train. So there's another way to access these platform providers, which is the federated identity. And because federated identity does not rely on IP address, it just relies on your eduID education identity. It just basically means the authentication, the provider basically relies on the identification and security mechanisms within eduID to assert who you are. So, in lay terms, yes, if you're part of the Nigerian Identity Federation, you can actually access that platform anywhere. You're no longer restricted to your campus. You can access from anywhere in the world, whether Nigeria, any part of the world, because they're using your ID in your identity provider to identify who you are, not based on your location.
All right, thank you very much
Um,
for that. That's the last question. So we'll be going to the next presentation now on the eduroam. Thank you very much for participating on this. So you may not need to close the Menti poll. We still have another poll right after the next presentation, so you can still just leave the page open. Thank you.
right. Okay. Right. So time is far spent. So I'm going to try to rush through this particular presentation. Right. So I'm going to talk about eduroam, right? So we've just finished talking about eduID.ng, and we were basically saying that through through an identity federation, you can have access to different kinds of services. Now, one of the major services that is provided as a result of membership of an identity federation is eduroam. So eduroam stands for education roaming. And to just put that into context, um, what happens is particularly for researchers and academic staff in particular, more so than students, are very mobile. Researchers are attending conferences and meetings within Nigeria and beyond, annual conferences, workshops, locally and internationally that academic staff and researchers are attending on a regular basis. And increasingly, these venues are providing eduroam services to take the hassle away for people having to have usernames and passwords or bits of paper in order to connect to the internet. So increasingly, for those of you who certainly travel internationally, you will be seeing at conferences that in order to connect to the conference network or the internet, you can use eduroam. And basically, what that means is that if you're already an eduroam user in Nigeria, anywhere in the world, across the country or in the world where eduroam is being provided as a service, as a Wi-Fi service, you will seamlessly connect to that network. And you really need to see it in practice to really understand how fulfilling that service is. So, for example, if you many of you who may have gone to South Africa, maybe for a conference or something related to your work, if you arrive at the Johannesburg airport and you want to connect to the internet in Johannesburg, it would, and if you look at, okay, how can I connect? You will actually see eduroam. So by seeing eduroam, if you already use eduroam in Nigeria, your laptop or your phone will just automatically connect to the Wi-Fi in Johannesburg Airport. And increasingly, airports and international hotel chains are adopting eduroam as a way for users to connect to their Wi-Fi because they know that the education community moves around quite a lot. So um, eduroam is this service specifically created for the research and education community to have the benefits of being able to connect to Wi-Fi anywhere eduroam is actually enabled. So it's a really fantastic service. It's being globally used around campuses around the globe. And increasingly, airports and hotel chains are saying, look, we're not education institutions, but we have a lot of people from the education community that come through our airports and through our hotels. So we want to offer eduroam as a Wi-Fi service for their benefits. So it's really great. So the idea in theory is that if all universities in Nigeria uh, are utilizing eduroam, it means that anytime you go to another campus to visit, you should just be able to automatically connect to the Wi-Fi network of that campus that you're visiting without having to worry about usernames or passwords. Yeah. So I'll try to run through this presentation. I think I've already kind of introduced it. I'll touch on uh, governance and eligibility. And again, they're very similar to what we've already discussed with the federated identity. And the data even on this slide might actually be a bit outdated now. There are far more than, I think there are more about 20,000 eduroam hotspots around the world now. And there are more territories around the world. This particular slide is probably over 2 years old. So there are more and more uh, countries and institutions that are adopting eduroam. So the little map there globally, the dark blue, the darkened colors show where eduroam is available. And yes, there are a few institutions in Nigeria that are using eduroam. Hence, Nigeria is darkened. But within Nigeria itself, there are just a handful of institutions that currently have eduroam deployed on their campuses. But as you can see globally, eduroam is really everywhere in Europe and North and South America. So in fact, Africa is really one of the continents that's still slow in the adoption of eduroam. But for those of you that do have eduroam on your campuses, it means that when you travel outside Nigeria to Europe, the States, or wherever, you'll have seamless access to Wi-Fi networks across the world. Yeah. And so again, the service is, predicated on trust between the participating institutions and the service providers. So it's eduroam basically relies on identity federations to give you that Wi-Fi service. And Eko-Konnect in collaboration with NGREN, where the actual, what you call the NRO or National Roaming Operator for eduroam. So we're responsible for managing how eduroam works in Nigeria. And if your eduroam is working in Nigeria, then it means you can work, you have access to eduroam globally. All right. So So again, the business case, we've kind of just sort of mentioned some of the use cases. And again, like we say, if you're going out of the country for a conference or another institution, and that institution provides eduroam, then you can go to that institution knowing that your current laptop and phones will get to that campus and automatically connect to the campus network of that visit institution that you're visiting. And like I said, it's a very powerful service. I remember myself when I'm in the UK and I'm maybe traveling by train from one part of the UK to another. When I'm on the train and the train's typically traveling and passing near university campuses, I see my phone and my laptop connecting to the different hotspots in those university campuses because I have eduroam enabled on my phone and on my laptop. So I'm always connecting to all of these Wi-Fi networks in university campuses. And strangely enough, I talked about eduroam being used in hotels and airports. They're also now being used in general practitioners. They're also supporting eduroam in the doctor's surgeries. So I went to a hospital last Christmas when I was in the UK, and they have access points that are eduroam enabled. So my phone connected to the internet through the eduroam hotspot that was in the GP surgery. So it's really becoming a ubiquitous global service. So some of the common misconceptions is that again, um, uh, that eduroam is an unreliable service. It's very reliable now. It's very easy for end users to use. I think the real challenge in Nigeria for eduroam adoption is having a robust campus network. But if you have a robust campus network and you're signed up to the Identity Federation, then eduroam is a very easy service to access. Now, if you're not signed up to the Identity Federation, and want to leverage eduroam, then that is possible, but it's a little bit more complicated to get connected to eduroam. And I think that's probably where some of the misconception that it's a difficult technology to use comes from. But if you're subscribed to the Identity Federation, you have a very robust campus network. eduroam is a great service to have on campus. And similar to the Identity Federation, it it essentially uses that whole idea of an identity provider. So I be able to identify who you are, because eduroam is a service that is geared at people only in the academic community. So they want to ensure that people, users of the service, belong to academia, i.e., you're a student, you're a researcher, you're a lecturer, then you should be able to use that Wi-Fi service. But if you're not uh, a member of the research and education community, they don't want you to use the service. It's really only for academic people. Right. So again, you have the service providers who are maintaining the infrastructure in the different countries, ensuring that the security protocols are such that the whole eduroam ecosystem locally and internationally is not compromised. And really, that's the role in Nigeria of the national roaming operator, is to ensure that the infrastructure that we're using for the authentication of users is robust. We use radius technology to sort of house all the authentication mechanisms, and then members of eduroam in Nigeria have to have associated infrastructure on their campus to be part of the eduroam in Nigeria. And then once you're part of the eduroam in Nigeria, you have automatic and seamless access to eduroam globally if you travel. The Global eduroam, there's a global committee similar to EduGain that basically is responsible for governance. And again, governance ensures that new rules, like we say, until recently, it was strictly just the academic community that could use eduroam, but increasingly, hotels and hospitals and airports are wanting to be service providers, being able to also offer eduroam in their premises. So they would have made a request to the global eduroam governance to make that request, and then it would have been decided if more external the of the eduroam governance. And then Helen, I don't know, some of you may know Helen Nakawungu. She's from the Research and Education Network in Uganda. And Guy Halls, he was from Tenet. Uh, Tenet is the South African NREN. So guys, these are the three members of the governance from Africa. Eligibility to use eduroam, similar to essentially the Identity Federation. Um, and so, like we say, essentially only not-for-profit organizations can really be users of eduroam. And the application process for eduroam, first of all, there are two layers. There's a lot of the administrative process to guarantee that you will an institution that wants to use eduroam must provide a written guarantee that their users of eduroam will only be bona fide members of the university. So you have to give that guarantee and then ensure that once your students are graduating from your institutions, they're taken off the database of eduroam or even federated identity users so that the ecosystem globally is not compromised. So there's a level of admin and legal documentation that needs to be sorted out. And then there are some technical requirements that needs to be looked at. Now, typically, in deploying eduroam, we would typically look at giving a kind of 90 days of grace to ensure that eduroam is running properly on the campus. Then, and once that has been established, then a compliance statement needs to be signed so that we submit that to the global eduroam governing body. And then we might engage in maybe commercial discussions if they apply. But at the moment, eduroam is really a free service to be used by the research and education community as of now. There's a tool called CAT, Configuration Assistant Tool. That's a tool that helps you to easily configure eduroam on your devices, typically your mobile devices, mobile phones. So it's a very popular tool for configuring eduroam on your devices. There'll be some links that you can look at to get more information about how the eduroam CAT tool actually works. And as I just mentioned before, cost for membership of eduroam, it's free. It's a free service. But the global community as well is also kind of looking at how to keep ensuring the sustainability of the infrastructure and support, particularly now that it's become such a popular service around the globe. Uh, it's been very, very successful. So for now, I think it might still continue to be free because particularly in Africa as well, we want to see more of an adoption of eduroam, especially in Nigeria. I think there are only maybe three institutions that are eduroam enabled. So we really need to improve on the eduroam uptake. And in lieu of that, WACREN are actually going to be running a workshop next week. I think it's from the 9th of October, 7th of October to the 9th of October, I believe. Or is it from the 9th to the 11th? Or actually, I think it's from the
9
9th
to
of
9 to 11.
9th to the 11th of October. They'll be running uh, an eduroam workshop. It's more of a technical workshop for IT staff and networking staff to get to grips with some of the technical fundamentals of eduroam so it can be effectively deployed. From an Eko-Konnect perspective, any institution that's interested in deploying eduroam, we would want to hear from you so we can now, we're setting up a schedule where we're going to be scheduling, assisting university campuses with their eduroam deployments. So if that is something that eduroam is of interest for you to use in your campuses, we very much want to hear from you. And what we want to do is start to schedule visits where we can then assist with the actual deployments. So for more information, you can go to the eduroam.ng that will give you a localized interpretation of eduroam. But then if you want more global understanding of how eduroam is being used and offered globally, you can also go to eduroam.org. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the quicker presentation. Ikiru, I know your hands is up. We'll be happy to answer any questions shortly. And also, if you have any questions, please you can use the chat or the Q&A to ask any questions you may have. So just before we get into the Q&A proper, like I said earlier, I just want us to have a conclusion to the poll we started earlier. So we just get some bits of information on your understanding of eduroam and how you'd also see benefits of eduroam on campus. So like I said, okay, if you've not closed your page, so we can just quickly proceed up onto that. So you could access the Menti poll using the code at the top of the screen. Okay. And also there are some links in the chat as well. You could also just use that to get in some information that you require more in learning about what are eduroam and federated identity has to offer your institution. So can we just quickly access this Mentipoll? Let's just finish on that, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. All right. So just going to open the question. So let's just answer that quickly. So remember menti.com, and then use the code and then you use the code to access it. So let's quickly do that. We are short on time, so we can answer finish the poll and answer any questions you maybe have and discuss the next step, and then we end the webinar for the day. All right, still waiting for responses. Are we having any issue accessing the poll? Please let us know in the chat if you're having any issues. Otherwise, please, you are free to answer, to use the question.
Must be an issue, Ola. Nobody's answering responding to the Menti poll.
Yeah.
While you're looking into that, somebody was asking in Kiru, how will eduID benefit a non-conventional institution whose courses are somewhat specialized? Don't you think that many of the databases may not benefit this institution with specialized courses? Not entirely sure if I understand the question in Kiru. Like I said, eduID.ng is a infrastructure that allows you to get access to platforms and services. So I'm not quite sure if I understand that question. So yeah, and then to open out eduroam. Eduroam is a Wi-Fi service, basically, that leverages identity federations to give you access to Wi-Fi. So it's a service that could be very useful to deploy on your campus network, just to make authentication to your own campus networks easier, but more seamless. But the additional benefit with the eduroam service is that the same credentials that you use to access your local campus network, you can actually use those same credentials to access other Wi-Fi in other institutions across the country and across the world using those same credentials. So that's the core of the benefit for eduroam.
So any other questions, please use the poll. Yeah. All right, so there's another question in the Q&A.
Well, in terms of, yes, we recognize, I think someone's asking about, we recognize that we need to do a better job of advertising the services. even Eko-Konnect ourselves, there are some internal infrastructure improvements that we need to make the services more robust. So we're sort of trying to deal with that. But yeah, quite rightly, that there needs to be more awareness of these services, particularly federated identity and eduroam. So as well, this is, like I said, it's a global service, and WACRN themselves are also pushing for more adoption of eduroam within the West African region. And like I said, they'll be running a workshop, technical workshop, three-day workshop next week. But this for Eko-Konnect is really part of our own kind of beginning of a sensitization program that we want to start to run in this quarter and pretty much throughout 2025 to push and improve the adoption of federated identity services, eduroam, and potentially other services that can leverage this infrastructure. So we'll be having our users conference in January, third week of January, and no doubt we'll be also talking about this during that conference. But for those campuses that are probably kind of ready to move forward, particularly with eduroam, then we certainly want to start to engage with those institutions in eduroam deployments.
Thank you for that. So we are on to the next question. So do both staff and students currently have access to your campus network? So I think the majority says yes. So I don't know if anyone is still answering that. So that we can quickly go to the few questions that are left, and then we are able to answer any other questions that would come up. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so thank you for your answer. So I'll go to the next question. So rate your campus network and internet connectivity while you are on campus. When you are using the campus network now, not your mobile network, when you're using the campus network, how would you rate the service, the speed, the connectivity? Okay, is it campus wide, or do you have to be in a specific location to access the network? How fast is it? Is it slow? So we're just trying to understand that here. All right, still waiting for more responses. So you have seen that the majority says good and also fair. Seems to be the next. Okay. So this, thank you very much, everyone. So we would like to go to the next question. So this is just you could just type in what are the barriers to eduroam on your campus. Okay, you've listened to eduroam now. You've listened to some of the features, some of the benefits of eduroam, some of the ways that eduroam can greatly benefit your institutions. So, but they're now looking at it at on your own campus level. What could you feel? Do you feel could be the challenge, a typical challenge that would hinder the adoption of eduroam on campus? Just type a simple response in here for us. Well, I think we've answered that to some extent that at least, well, maybe joining eduroam is free. So maybe it's still about your own internal campus, maybe how you would be able to address the cost of properly expanding on your campus network. Okay, so cost of campus network. So I would assume that would be the cost of actually setting up your various networks on campus. Lack of awareness. Okay. And then that would greatly tell us that we need to do uh, much more work on improving awareness for the community with regards to education. So we are likely over time. So I may have to rush us through to the next question. If there's anyone still on this question, capital. So I can see the majority of this barrier is really cost. It's really toward pushing towards the costs. Sustenance.
Electricity, yeah.
Management preference. Person that says management preference, I would have loved to understand more you'd understand by management preference. Maybe it's all right. So I would want to move to the next question quickly. It's almost the same thing. All right, so next question here, just a bit of ranking as well, similar to what we did with eduID. So what benefit do you think eduroam will bring to your institution as well? So let's quickly just rank this as well with from most preferred to the least preferred. We are currently on the. Well, I'm yet to go to the next question. If you look on the screen, this is the. We are currently answering this question now. If you have answered it, yes, you just wait for everyone to for me to move to the next question. Okay. Just like one more response, so I can proceed quickly to the next question. Just one more response. All right. So let me just go. Let me just go on then. So this should be the final question. So do you think there's enough value in eduroam and eduID to be a paid service? So basically, is your having listened to both services, eduroam and eduID, Is this something you feel your institution would be willing to spend some sort of a fee on for to manage to properly deploy this? Mustafa, you may need to reload, refresh. You need to refresh the page if you are stuck. So I'm still looking in the chat or the Q&A for any questions. Okay. So if there are no more response, I would love to end that because of time. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating in this. So the responses have been duly noted, and it would greatly help us uh, in our own planning, at least with understanding what the community would want us to do. So just on a final note before I hand over to Owen to close up. So just a bit about Eko-Konnect and what services we offer. At Eko-Konnect, we offer some repository development and training. So for institutions that would need require institutional repository, Eko-Konnect offers hosted disk-based services repository. We deploy your institutional repository for you and also help train your repository managers. Also for institutions that have that are on older versions of this space, we also help with updating that. We also offer some open science and open access advocacy with regards to persistent identifiers for DOIs. If you require institutional, you require DOIs for your research outputs. Eko-Konnect are currently the data science DOI consortium lead in Nigeria. And also the same applies to ORG-ID as well for researchers ID. And just as we've discussed about eduID and eduroam, we are happy to help support you in with regards to the deployment or even more understanding or consultancy on either of these services. And the same applies to educational, digital educational training, which we get to e-learning as well. So we are happy to answer any of your questions. You could reach out to us in any of these channels, our website, or send a mail to support at Eko-Konnect here as well. So just to close up the webinar, I would hand over to Owen just to close up the webinar and discuss any of the steps that we may have. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I know we overran a little bit. There's going to be a concerted effort on Eko-Konnect's part as well to raise the awareness of some of these services, particularly the Identity Federation and eduroam. Those who are sort of very interested now in wanting to deploy eduroam, we'd like you to get in touch with us at the various emails that Ola referred to, because what we can start to do is schedule ways in which we can work with campuses to embark on their eduroam deployments. I'd like to also just mention that by the third week of January, we'll be running our users conference. I think the emphasis is going to be on leveraging infrastructure for global participation in the research and education ecosystem. So services like Identity Federation, eduroam, paid services, DOIs, ARCs, ORCID IDs, other infrastructure that's being globally used. We want to start to emphasize on these infrastructures, open access repositories, open platforms, journal platforms. We want to really drive the adoption of these platforms so that the Nigerian education and research community can be more visible and are participating in infrastructure that's basically being used globally. So again, what underpins a lot of this infrastructure is open open science, open access, or open research. So we really want to drive the adoption from this last quarter going into the new year. That's going to be our focus and emphasis. So we're going to run another workshop in November, kind of precursor to the user conference. So we'll be putting out some information about that in the next couple of weeks. But for now, we'd like to say thank you for everyone for spending a couple of hours of their time in this webinar. And again, if there are any questions we've not dealt with, please contact us through the different email addresses, and we'll also endeavor to get the slides sent out to you within the next few days. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here, and have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. So we'll be sharing the slides that you said and the recordings for everyone. So look forward to the discussion with the community. Thank you very much.